So excited to share this message with you this morning. We've been talking about a Tov church, right? A good church, which is what we want to be, right? In the Old Testament, we find the word good, the word Tov, 700 times. And and we don't have to go very far to know the exact and best definition of good. And it would be the Creator himself. No one's better. No one's gooder. I know that's not a word. Right? But he is the definition, right? The best definition of good, right? Because he not only created us, right? But then he restored us through the sacrifice of his son Jesus Christ, brought us back into relationship with him. Creates us and then gives us the opportunity to restore relationship back to him through his son Jesus Christ. I don't know how to say anything is better than that. Because that act right there allows us to enter into eternity with him. So it's even better. Can't say gooder. Better. Right? So, and that's the thing about this relationship with God, is that it's so awesome. And every time you enter into a deeper, more intense, more intimate relationship with him, it gets better.
Hey, yes.
You know, it's not necessarily how relationships here on earth happen, right? Because you start to establish a relationship with somebody and they only let you in so far, right? And then maybe a couple visits later, they let you in a little further and you learn a little more about them. And then as the years progress, you start finding out their true selves. And then you're not so excited. And then you're like reevaluating, why did I get into this relationship in the first place? Right? But it isn't that way with God. Anytime we go further in our relationship with God, he just surprises us and just makes it more beneficial to us. Because even in our suffering, he picks us up and walks us through the valley. He walks us through those dark evenings and those dark moments. And we have hope in him. We have love in him. So today, I'm going to be ending this series on a Tov church, and so it ends like this. A Tov church exercises empathy and compassion. And it's very interesting because this morning in Sunday school they were talking indirectly about this. So she keeps stealing my notes. If we go to 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 9, in the King James Version, it reads, called to be a blessing, right? You and I are called to be a blessing. Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 and 9, finally, all of you be of one mind. How many minds? One mind. One mind, having compassion for one another. Love as brothers. Be tender-hearted. Be courteous, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling. But on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this, that you may inherit a blessing. So in order to inherit a blessing, Dave, I must be a blessing. Interesting, right? And then I need somebody with a loud voice that will read the amplified version that is in your notes, because I don't have a slide for the amplified version. So who's loud? Sarah is loud. Okay, thank you, Kim, for identifying the loud person in the congregation. Sarah.
How loud do you want me? Very loud. Okay.
About that loud.
1 Peter 3, 8 and 9. Finally, all of you be like-minded, sympathetic, brotherly, kind-hearted, courteous, and compassionate toward each other as members of one household, and humble in spirit, and never return evil for evil or insult for insult. Avoid scolding, berating, and any kind of abuse. But on the contrary, give a blessing. Pray for one another's well-being, contentment, and protection. For you have been called for this very purpose, that you might inherit a blessing from God that brings well-being, happiness, and protection.
Well-being, happiness, and protection. We want to be a blessing to others if it's going to bring well-being, happiness, and protection to me. Oh, I'm going to make sure I bless quite a few every day. Just because I want to be happy, right? I believe God calls each and every one of us as Christians to show empathy for our fellow man. And I hope you believe that also. And if you don't, by the end of the sermon today, I hope you develop this virtue of showing empathy towards others. I'm going to talk about Jesus this morning because there's no greater example, right? In becoming man, right? In incorporating himself into a physical body, Jesus entered into empathy with us, with you and me. Because he entered a physical body, he's able to identify with us. Because even though he was Jesus, right, the Son of the eternal God, he entered a physical body, which meant he entered into a limited, right, self. Because as mortal men, we're limited, right? We have to succumb to sickness. We have to succumb to all kinds of struggles in life, and even have to deal with relationships and learning how to deal with relationships. And all that could cause us some pain. He was also, as a man, he experienced emotions, just like you and I experience. And in knowing the pain of others, he was led to perform great miracles of compassion. I want to read that again. In knowing the pain of others, he was led to perform great miracles of compassion. You and I need to know the pain of others so that we can go to the Father and ask for miracles of compassion for our fellow man. That's what it takes in being a good church, is understanding that Alan is going through some pain. And I need to join with him in prayer so that the Lord will perform a miracle in whatever area of his life that he needs a miracle. A miracle of compassion. And we will find out this morning, and most of you should already know, that Jesus was moved quite a few times while he was here on earth. As a matter of fact, many times. It says that anyone and everyone that came to him that was sick, he healed them. It is said that the whole world could not hold the volumes of books that could be written about all the things that he did in the short 3 years he lived here on earth. Jesus felt for the blind. He felt for the sick. He had compassion over the lame. And more importantly, he had compassion and love for all sinners. In the New Testament, he shows empathy through his love for his friend Lazarus. You know that story. He understood the pain and the loss of Lazarus' sisters, of losing a brother, losing the one that provided for them. Right? So it wasn't just that Lazarus went to sleep, deep sleep. It was that his sisters were also hurt, right? And, there's a consequence when people are lost, when a family member is lost. There's pain, there's loss, it could be economic loss, and in this case it was. But Jesus had compassion for Lazarus, and he raised him from the dead. Amen. That's one of many stories. I can recall in my life that when I've experienced pain, I've felt Jesus' presence walking with me in my suffering. I know that he weeps right there along with me. I know that he feels when I feel lonely, when I feel afraid, when I feel anxious, when I'm pessimistic, when I feel hopeless. He's there.
Yes.
He's there. I look back at my life, in the most difficult moments of my life, I've seen Jesus carrying me. Because there's no way that I personally could have handled some of those life struggles. I remember not so long ago, less than 3 years ago, I was at a medical appointment. And I was arguing with the doctor. And he ended the argument real quick when he told me these words: "You are a heart attack waiting to happen." Kind of shocked you there, huh? Yeah. The doctor would tell you that phrase, that sentence. It shook me. It shook me to my very core. But God was so good that that day, after leaving the medical appointment, I was going into a pastor's prayer meeting. And I left the doctor's office pretty heartbroken, pretty upset. And I went into the pastor's prayer meeting, and I remember walking in, and I'm like, what do I do? I'm going into a meeting where I'm supposed to lead pastors in prayer. I'm supposed to be optimistic. I'm supposed to be excited. I'm supposed to bring an encouraging word, and I don't have it. because I've just been given some horrible news. And to top it all off, I didn't want to share it with anybody because I had not shared it with my wife yet. So my wife is in the lunch, prayer lunch with all the pastors. And I'm like, I got the mic. And I'm like, what do I do? I can't take her by surprise in front of everybody. So I struggled with this for a little bit until I was able to step aside, have a conversation with my wife real quick, and let her know. And then, while I prayed for others, I felt God's peace come over me. And then the Spirit led me to call everyone to front and center of that meeting and say, if you're sick, the Lord wants to perform a miracle here this morning. And so the group is all looking, and I asked people to step into the middle of the room. And so I stepped into the middle of the room because I'm the first one that needed a miracle that morning. You know, I'm not shy about saying I need God. I'm not shy about saying I need prayer. None of us should be shy about saying that we need our Creator, we need our Savior, we need our healer, we need our provider. We shouldn't be afraid of that. Shouldn't have any fear. And I stepped into the middle of the room. And then I said, just in case you guys didn't notice, I am now in the middle of the room. I need prayer. I need prayer. Now, a lot of times when you're the leader of an organization or a church or whatever, you're afraid for people to know that you need prayer because you want to put this front like, I got it all together. I got it all together. But a Tob church is all right with people saying, I don't have it together. I need to come into the center of the room, and I need you and you and you and you to lay hands on me and pray for me because I need His love. I need His touch. A Tob church creates a scenario where everyone can feel safe in asking for prayer. Everyone can feel safe in saying, I don't have it together. I'm new with this. I need help in this area or that area. I don't have it all together. I don't have an issue coming here. And even though I get in front of you every Sunday, there are times where I might be preaching, but I have a need, and a great need. And sometimes it's not appropriate for me to share my needs out in public, because it might be a private request. It might be something I'm struggling with in my personality, right? And or in my character, and God needs to build me up. I need the Lord to work in me, but even I need to be okay with saying, I need prayer. I need prayer. We all need to be okay with whomever chooses to come to the center or to come to the altar. I love that during the praise and prayer, we give the people the opportunity of saying, and those that have a silent request, feel free to raise your hand. That encompasses all of us, because sometimes we're not comfortable sharing. Now, a Tobe church makes it so that everyone is comfortable sharing, right? Because a Tobe church does not judge. A Tobe church does not put people down. A Tobe church doesn't rejoice when somebody is down in the dumps. It is said that Jesus, being the Son of God, wept. He wept for his friend Lazarus. He also wept for Jerusalem. See, because he came to save the Israelites, the people Israel, the Jews first. And they didn't understand. They didn't have a clue. That's pretty amazing that you're coming to save somebody and they don't have a clue that you're there for their salvation. But that would make any of us weep. When we know we're the solution to a problem and the other party in the scenario doesn't know that we're the solution, doesn't understand that we're the solution, doesn't even want to understand or accept that we are the solution. Because that happens, Brother David. Jesus, my Lord, is never detached. He is never separated. He is never removed. He is never apart. He is never disconnected with what you are going through. Amen. And as brothers and sisters in Christ, as His church, we shouldn't be detached. We shouldn't be removed. We shouldn't be disconnected with what's happening with our brothers and sisters. We should be like Him. He listens. He feels. He has compassion. He empathizes. He cares. In everything that we feel and with everything that we feel. He cares. And you and I need to care. This morning I pray that you and I follow His example and use empathy and compassion to create a church culture of connection and compassion and not one of indifference. That's my prayer. That all of us together decide to connect with one another. Make a decision to have compassion, to be caring for one another. And that we don't continue to be indifferent. Because there's enough indifference out there. There's enough indifference out in the world. Right? It seems like in America, everybody's out for himself. And there's much indifference for others' needs. Much indifference for what others are going through. Because we are concerned with numero uno. Number one. For those of you that don't know the heavenly language. That was a joke. See, the interesting thing about empathy is that it's a learned behavior, right? Children need to be taught how to be empathetic, right? Right? Because a child is having a conversation with you and will tell you, oh, my friend lost her cat. This is an example that I have written in your notes. And you reply, or I reply, did you tell her you feel sad about that? And a child, doesn't think in necessarily think in this pattern. And they might answer, why would I feel sad? She's the one that lost her cat. And you and I need to teach that child that we should have compassion, that we should care when someone else is going through hurt or loss. We should care. Empathy is taught. It's a learned behavior. And Jesus, the master of all teachers, definitely put empathy on display every day. Every day. Every chance he got. Every encounter that he had with every person that he came in contact with, he showed empathy. Empathy and compassion, this is a repeat of what I just said, are cognitive processes of reasoning that can be learned. And if we want to be Christ-like, if we are walking toward being more Christ-like, then this is a behavior we need to copy. It's okay to copy good behaviors. It's okay to allow Jesus to be our example. So this is a definition of compassion that I found doing my research. It is being moved at one's gut level, death by pain or bliss of another. Okay? It hurts you to the pit of your stomach. Okay? And we respond in ways that intend to ease their suffering or promote their flourishing. If you need to leave, it's okay. Being moved to your gut level till it hurts you in the gut. My 4-year-old granddaughter likes to be physical at times, and at times she just squares up and she doesn't realize how strong she really is, and she'll just hit me in the gut. And this is what this definition is saying, that when somebody else hurts, we feel it in the pit of our guts. We extend our compassion to them, right? And we look for ways to ease their suffering and to bring healing to them, to promote flourishing, right? To bring healing, to bring peace, to bring love, to bring compassion. It involves looking inside ourselves and responding. In the Old Testament, God is described as having compassion at least a dozen times. In the Gospels, there's 6 very clear illustrations of Jesus having compassion. I'm going to cover one of those today. And this one is, you can almost gloss over it because it's not that huge of a miracle considering other miracles, like, raising Lazarus from the dead. That was a miracle and a half, right? Maybe a miracle and 3/4, but that was a huge miracle. Feeding 5,000 men, women, and children, that seems like a wow, super huge miracle. But this story in Luke chapter 13, verses 10 through 17, please read it at home later. Jesus exercises compassion for a woman that was bent over. Now, bent over, hunched over, we come to expect that with women of age, right? And men of age, right? Body starts to weaken, our muscles weaken, our bones weaken, right? And we start to hunch over, right? And we don't think anything of it. As a matter of fact, you have a healing service, and people that are hunched over probably don't even come to the front because they're like, oh, well, I'll settle for this. This is part of life. This is part of the growing old process. This is part of the cycle of life. We're all going to get there. We're all going to go through this. Yet, in Luke 13, Jesus has compassion for this woman. Has compassion for a woman that was hunched over. And not only does he have compassion for her and is concerned about her, but he also heals her on a day where you weren't supposed to heal because it was the Sabbath day. So he goes against all the religious practices of the day and heals her on the Sabbath. And we'll get back to that in a minute. But he was able to share with this woman her feelings of infirmity, right? He felt for her. He felt for her sickness. He knew how much this woman had suffered because it says she suffered for quite a few years. I think 18? 18 years. Thank you, Kim. All right. Suffered much. He wanted her to be free, both physically and spiritually. Because I want you to know that when you're going through physical ailments, it messes with your spiritual being too. They go hand in hand. Why? Because when you're going through physical issues, you start questioning your spiritual belief systems. You start questioning, well, Lord, you say you're my healer, but I don't see my healing coming, right? So, Jesus wants us to be free, both physically and spiritually. The woman had been crippled for 18 years. She was hunched over and could not straighten up at all, right? That's horrible that you would have to walk like that. It's painful, right? Couldn't straighten up. Can you imagine going through physical pain for 18 years? Now, the reason why I went to see the doctor, I'm circling back to my doctor visit. The reason why I went to the doctor was because I was feeling sharp pains in my hands and the bottom of my feet. neuropathy, for those of you wondering. That's why I went to the doctor, because my nerves were bothering me. And that's when he said, your sugars are messed up. And we started arguing, and I said, but no, my sugars are fine. And once he ran the test, he made that declaration, you're a heart attack waiting to happen. Right? But it all was because there's times during the day that I feel like I am being stabbed with 1,000 needles in my hands and in my feet. And I've been going through this for about 3 years. And it was worse when I went to the doctor. It's been getting progressively better each and every day because I'm controlling my sugars. And that's part of that. It took 40 plus years to damage my nerves. It's going to take a while for that healing to happen unless God decides to intervene in a miraculous way, which I'm totally open to, Lord, just so you know. Totally open to that. Amen. Right? But this woman suffered for 18 years. Jesus tells the woman, woman, you are set free from your ailment. Woman, you are set free from your ailment. This morning, Jesus wants to tell you that you are free. That you are free from whatever ailment, from whatever suffering, from whatever binds you. Whatever issue has been messing with your head all these years, Jesus wants to set you free from that. You and I can be free from feelings of anxiety and pressure that weighs us down. And I am grateful to God that He has given me personally the joy and freedom many times since I have been a follower of Jesus. It was a perfect day for me of hearing that message from the doctor, but then my very next activity being a prayer lunch. Because even though I didn't receive my instant healing of being freed from diabetes and being freed from neuropathy, I began walking into my healing on that day. And I'll tell you how I began walking into my healing, because sometimes we need to cooperate. Sometimes we need to make some changes. And what happened that day, the Lord gave me the strength of being able to do something that I have issues with. And it's self-control when it comes to food. A few years ago, about 12, I was 350 pounds. When the doctor told me my sugars were out of whack again, because I had dealt with this issue before, I had started behaving, I had lost the weight, but then, you know, you get comfortable and you're like, oh, I beat this. That's why I wanted to argue with the doctor. I beat diabetes already. So why am I going through this again? So at that point I was 240. And I started doing everything he told me to do. He goes, I shouldn't even tell you because nobody behaves. Nobody behaves. Nobody does it. Nobody listens to my instructions. I said, I will. He goes, nobody does. I dropped from 240 to 170. Now I need you to pray, help me pray, because I'm up to 180. So I need to continue to, and it's not just dropping weight, it's eating right and continuing to eat right, and it's continuing to exercise and doing stuff that give you a better life. Like walking. Like a little bit of exercise when you get to my age, a little bit of exercise. You know, stuff I don't like to do. I don't like to exercise. I thought my best exercise was this. But it isn't, not supposed to be. But boy, you know, that prayer meeting was the perfect setting for me. And that's why coming to church and coming around church people is a good thing. Because when you're around church people, somebody's going to say, my brother, let me pray with you. Give me the honor of praying for you. Give me the privilege of praying for you and with you. Let me help you carry this load. Let me help you walk through this. See, when Jesus, after he healed the woman that had the blood issue, he was going to the ruler's house, right? And even though everybody had told the ruler that his daughter was dead, don't bother the master anymore, the master said, she's just sleeping. He walked with that ruler. Now, I don't know about you, but if I go to Jesus and because one of my family members is dead, and Jesus doesn't give me an answer, doesn't provide me with any instruction or words, and I know I have to go back home and face that death, it's going to be a sad walk for me. It's going to be a slow walk for me. But if Jesus tells me, have no fear, your child is not dead, she just sleeps, all of a sudden, my walk is a little faster. I'm a little bit more excited about going home because I know God is about to perform something. And that's why it's very important that when somebody is down, when somebody is down and out, when somebody is going through suffering, it's important that you come alongside them with an encouraging word, with an encouraging prayer. Because you're going to bring energy into that person. You're bringing hope into that person. And not because of who you are, but because of who you believe in. Because my showing up in your hospital room means absolutely nothing. But who I show up with to your hospital room means everything. Because the one that I show up with can heal you, can raise people from the dead, can take your situation, no matter how ugly it is, and turn it for good. turn it for good. Turn it for good. Somebody's got to believe that this morning. Oh, man. I'm not going to enter into this issue about the Sabbath. The only thing is that we cannot become so religious that it gets in the way of somebody's healing, that it gets in the way of somebody's salvation. We cannot become so religious that we are the stumbling block for that person's miracle, for that person's move of God. Now, the Jewish leaders, religious leaders, were pretty serious about the Sabbath. They had over 39 rules as to how, on what you couldn't do on the Sabbath. And they got upset with Jesus for healing on the Sabbath. We can't do that as a church. We cannot get upset because Jesus decides to do something in somebody's life, and he hasn't taken care of possibly our need. We can't get upset about that. We need to stay focused. We need to stay pure. Our heart needs to rejoice when the Lord is at work in somebody else's life. So in your notes, you have quite a few things about Jesus and the Sabbath. You can do that throughout the week. You can research that and study that. So how can we be like Jesus? Jesus clearly tried to understand the woman's situation. He treated her as a person with value, right? He didn't just say, oh, well, that's part of life. Oh, that's part of the aging process. He pays attention to the physical and the spiritual aspects of the person's life. And when we're dealing with people's needs, we need to look at things in the natural, and we need to look at things from the spiritual perspective. The fact that they're homeless, we're looking at the natural. But more importantly, is their eternal home in heaven. So we got to look at both situations, the natural and the spiritual. I'm moving through this because I want to get through here. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, it reads, when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. In John chapter 1, verse 1, and chapter 14, verse 6, despite Jesus being God in the flesh, he never acted prideful. Never acted superior, never acted indifferent to people. Rather than growing annoyed or being hostile to people, he extended love. And that's what you and I need to be. Extend love. We need to be the hope dealers of the neighborhood. We need to be the love dealers of the neighborhood. Now, some of you laugh because you were another kind of dealer. Right? That was in the past. Now, you're a hope dealer. You're a love dealer. Everyone Everyone has access to Jesus. And you and I need to open the door. Show them the way. Open up the opportunity through testifying, through talking about his goodness. And in Hebrews 4:15 it says, we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. See, whatever your struggle is, he's been there. He's gone through it. He understands. He chose not to sin. And you and I need to make that choice. You and I need to make that choice. And you and I need to let others know that they can make that choice too. In closing, I might have 2 or 3 closings, but in the next few slides I'll be attempting to close here. God loves all people. No distinction. All people. And he is delighted to extend empathy to each person in our society today. Even those that we don't agree with politically. Jesus loves them too. Even though we have different value systems than a lot of people in our culture, Jesus still extends empathy to them. Even when we don't see it, Jesus extends love and care and compassion to each and every one of these people. The Lord knows our thoughts, and he knows what our hearts feel. He yearns to patch up our brokenness and heal our hearts. I love that word. He yearns. It means he has a deep desire to patch up your brokenness and to heal your heart. He never wants us to walk down a dark road of depression alone. He's always walking with us every step of the way. So yes, I repeat this one more time. I believe that God calls you and I, as Christians, as followers of him, as his disciples, he calls us to show empathy, to show care, to show concern, to show love to our fellow man. And that's the verse I opened up with. Finally, all of you be of one mind, having compassion with one another. Love as brothers, be tender-hearted, be courteous, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling. But on the contrary, be a blessing, knowing that you were called to this, that you may inherit the blessing from him above. You are a blessing. You are a blessing too. Diane, you are a blessing. Every single one of you here this morning, you are a blessing. Don't forget that. Linda, you are a blessing. Yes. Each and every one of you is a blessing. Because the promise is that when you're a blessing, you will be blessed. Dear Lord, I thank you. Do you have a song? I thank you for this day. I thank you for this day. I thank you for this congregation. Because you are calling us to be like you. You are calling us to goodness. You're calling us to mercy. You're calling us to love. You're